especially where we all have to be outside to meet friends. It does help. Katarina, how are you?
I'm still traumatized from last night because we had a football final here in Portugal. Drupchen, I don't know if you had it in Setúbal. You know, at 1:30 in the morning, I was still calling the police because I had buses here with like making disco in the street.
It's true that I heard something. I didn't know what's happening.
Okay. It was a club that won the final of the football
Okay,
clubs here in Portugal. So I'm sorry today, I'm a bit tired. My head is completely exploding. I almost have no sleep. So
Oh, no.
Excuse me for any.
You live near the stadium?
No, but this is a very busy traffic place. I mean, yeah.
Okay. So, should we wait for Denis?
I don't think that she will come.
Okay. Is her mother ill still, or what's the situation?
She has passed away, actually.
Okay, yeah. Very sorry to hear that.
Sure.
Okay. So let's make a start. Did you find a paper that you would like to look at in more detail for next week? I gave you one of the tasks.
Yeah.
We can access this link. I haven't checked the link for online the online support for this book. Do we have access or?
Some of the companion website is freely accessible.
Oh, okay.
The link to Dole is not working. The link they give.
Okay.
Says error.
Which paper was that?
No, in the additional thing, there is a link to where they explain more about the principles of Etienne Dole, and they put a link to a lecture. It doesn't work.
Okay. Is that one you would like to?
I don't know what paper. There's so many. It was a bit confusing in this chapter. I thought there was so many references.
Yeah.
It was a bit difficult to get a hold of it, like a lot of information. I read actually the Indian and printed also the Chinese. I find them really boring.
Oh, really?
The ones that the two.
It's like facts. That's why I was in the chat. I was putting. I came upon another book that looks much more interesting about stories of the persons of the translators. You know? So I don't know what the other articles. Do you have a clue what they are about?
Well, there's lots of choice. So
too much.
Yeah.
Give us three. Give us three. I mean, there's some articles in the beginning, others at the end, others that are cited. So
I think you can look at page 56, Nara. All of them are together. Further reading.
Yes, the further reading. Is the
yes, I looked at that.
Were you referring to these Chinese authors, the Chung and Nerea?
Yeah.
Yeah, 2004 and 2006.
Sorry, can you say that again?
Your comment was on these authors that are reflecting upon the influence of the Chinese.
Oh, that I haven't read yet. I printed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, translation theory and practice in China. I read the one about Indian translation, but it's just like facts, like classical. This has been done. This has been done. Da da da. This has been done. This has been done.
Yeah, the Krishnamurti paper. Yeah.
Well, and okay, so what? You know, I felt like saying, I mean, it's good if you're looking for that information, what happened in that century. But so I wondered if the others were like that as well, or there was some of them a bit more exciting.
I think the others are better. Yeah, I was disappointed by the Krishnamurti paper as well. It was more just a list of different translations. It didn't go into any real discussion of the impact, which is what I was looking for. The Chinese one is better.
Okay. But it's good. If you start with the most boring one, then all the others would look very interesting.
The one that I thought I might give a try would be the one of the history of the English Bible translation and how it transformed the language.
Okay. Well, who's the author of that one?
Bob Brick, 2003.
Say the name again.
Bobrick, Bob Brick.
Okay. And is that one up on the companion website? I didn't read that one.
I don't know what companion website. Sorry.
Okay. Do you have the paper, or did you just?
No. I just started looking at the ones in the translation studies in 56. I can look for it now.
Yeah.
What is the Herman's paper covering a non-Western thought on translation? Have you read that one, Herman's?
Herman's. I don't think I read that one. No, that sounds interesting. Just looking for the.
Or Rundle about presentation of investigative methods in translation history. It's in history.
Okay, Katarina, what one would you?
I haven't seen that the references in the website, so I have to check. But it caught my attention. One of these two of Shan or Xiong, on the influence of Yan Fu, on the 20th century writings on translation. So one of these, if they are there, I will check which one might be more appealing to me and pick one of these.
Okay.
But if there's something, I will get in touch to.
Yeah. And
I don't know if this is the paper, but in 2003, Bobrick he published a book, but it's really it's like 350 pages. I don't know if that's referring to that one, but it's the revolution inspired.
A bit too much to read until next week.
Yeah. Maybe a little bit too much of the Bible too.
I was reading the I think Katarina mentioned it last week, the paper on Jerome, Saint Jerome.
Could you help me get into this website that you guys are talking about? I'm not sure how to put it where the other papers are.
Yeah, there's
the Routledge thing.
So for instance,
oh, I see it now. Is it woodledge.com CM Monday? Something like that?
Yeah, I'll just put it in the chat just a minute. So this, whoops, come on. Yeah, that's the same. Nerea just posted it there. I've seen it.
I thought it was the teacher.
Thank you.
So the I was reading the one on Saint Jerome, and that got very, very deep into the translation of the Bible and the Latin, and very interesting, but you know, just fascinating how back in the day some of the German commentators were writing, and it's just a sort of a mix of old German and Latin all just mixed up together how they're writing. So Yeah, but it is an interesting one to read. I found that, so I can send that to you. Drupchen, you think we've got a particular paper you might want to read?
Not quite, but I was looking at this one, the one right after the one that Santiago has said on Barbaric in the list here. Where is it? Just lost it. Yes, that on the history of English Bible translation, but from the translation studies perspective. So by Barnstone.
Oh, that looks interesting too.
Barnstone.
Yes.
Okay. So we're going to have a lot of the Bible. Sounds very relevant. Okay. And still, oh yeah, the Bobrick one.
But I don't know if they might have literally been indicating for the 300 something page book, so I might have to choose something else.
Yeah.
I'm still looking for it, and if not, I'll change to something else.
So, Nerea, you're thinking of reading the one by Luo and Lei. Is that the one?
Which one?
On translation theory and practice in China?
No.
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 Because no, actually, I was saying China because I have a book, very interesting one, but it's about translating from Chinese into our languages.
Okay.
That was very interesting. This one is a very good one. 4 essais sur la traduction, but it's in French.
Even better.
But this is very interesting about how to make choices when you translate from classical Chinese poetry.
Yeah.
Oh.
You have to put in things because they're not there. So you have to make a choice. And so when I was looking at the Chinese things, I thought, but then it's translating into Chinese. And there is this concept that is totally, I mean, quite strange for us, I think, this importance of elegance in writing, the style of writing. For us, as long as you can read and it's clear, and I found that interesting, but it's another idea of what written is.
Yeah.
You know? So yeah.
I'm just wondering whether that the technicalities of the language, the linguistic comparison might be more relevant a little bit later in the course. But it's, definitely, if you're interested in that, then you can definitely, do that. I'll give you this paper on the, as well. This.
I'm happy to read any paper.
Yeah. Because the one I read, the one that's also it's recommended somewhere in the book, which I will send you, is much better than the one on the Indian tradition. It goes through the history of the Chinese translation, but there's a lot more discussion of its impact. So. And it's more historically tied in. There's more. It's not just a list of what was translated when. So we'll put you down as China for next week. The topic.
Have different topics.
Yeah, if whatever proves to be. I mean, I'm only expecting you to take the time that we have, every week. So the hour at the beginning of our session, So I'm not expecting anyone to read a whole book or to make a presentation that that's going to last a long time. Just what you can do in that time. So just so we get a little bit of different perspective, a little bit more depth.
What is
these two are books. These Chinese authors. They are not
papers.
They are not papers. One is an anthology. So maybe I don't know if this is online. It's a 2006 from Martha Xiong. It's an anthology of Chinese discourse on translation from earliest times to the Buddhist project. So it might have an article, but I don't know if I can get the book online, to see the book online. I will try to.
And just found out that the one that I chose is a 302 pages book as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
the second reference, Katerina, the second reference from Martha Chung is the 2009 reference is an issue of a journal. So
2009? Okay.
The Martha Chung 2009 Chinese Discourses on Translation, special issue of the Translator.
Okay.
Might be able to find that.
And offline, online. It's the Taylor and Francis online.
Yeah.
This one is not get access.
So
do you have access to this? The Taylors and Francis online?
No, they're a bit difficult though, so probably don't.
I can ask a friend because a friend who's a teacher at university, so she can eventually have access.
Is anybody interested in science?
Sure. What about?
I have a nice chapter of a book on the role of translations in European scientific exchanges in the 16th and 17th centuries.
Oh, wow. I can look at it just to see, why not? It beats 350 pages of the Bible, so.
Well, the having some more depth on this topic of the Bible translation is very, very valuable, simply because this whole field has developed out of that, so that's also very, very useful. But this paper on the scientific exchanges is also quite interesting because it's obviously 16th, 17th century. We're still talking like this overlap between philosophy and science, where what we know as science was still sort of forming. So and the elites in the different countries who were sort of exploring this were using Latin, basically. So to some degree they didn't need to translate because they were all talking in Latin to each other. But yeah. Okay, so as long as we can find all the papers, looks like we've got some interesting topics. Topics for next week.
Which one was mine? Was it translation theory and practice in China? It's about China, but I don't know which one.
Yeah, I'll
Are you going to send us a mail with the?
Yes, I'll send you, Translation Theory and Practice in China by Luo and Wei. Lei.
Only. Okay, I have it. Don't need to
You have
send
it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just found one PDF of about 19 pages. That is the task of the translator in the European Renaissance.
Oh, that sounds good.
Explorations in a discursive field by Theo Hermans.
Okay. And Katerina, what was?
I was trying to open the
You're
book,
looking. Yeah, that's right. You're
but
still
to see
looking.
the Amazon maybe to see the how do you say it's 2 volumes, imagine, so it's huge.
Yeah.
Because
Okay.
it's just articles, it might have a.
Last week you asked me about the paper on Jerome. Are you still interested?
No,
in
no,
that one?
I was no, because they said they had several quotes in the site. It was not
Yeah.
actually the article, it was quotes by Saint Jerome. But
Right.
what article are you referring to?
It's all in Latin. I can't. It's by Rebenich. Jerome, the Vir Trilingui and the Hebraica Veritas.
Which means
Yeah, exactly. It goes into detail about Jerome and his claims about how he was translating. So amongst other things, they look into whether there was some debate about whether he actually understood the Hebrew or not, that he claimed he understood. But
no, but I was just referring to quotes that the site had, but it's okay.
Yeah.
Some quotes.
Okay. No,
important quotes.
I made a note that you were interested in that, so I found it and okay. Let's.
He knows Hebrew or not? I don't know. It might not be. Not that interesting to debate if he knows Hebrew or not, but.
Well, that's just one of the points in the article.
One of points. If you think he has other important points, it's okay.
What else can I recommend for you? What about moving into sort of like the impact of translation around the world? Does that interest you?
Translations around the world?
Well, the impact of translation on different cultures and.
Well, it can be. I don't mind. Any, it's okay.
Okay. Well, I'll send you two things on that. There's and you can sort of choose. And if you find something yourself, then of course you can do that. But I'll send you those 2 papers, and then you can choose. Okay, good. So let's get back to the chapter we read. And let's start just by doing that little multiple choice test they offer us. Where is it? Oh, I had it set up and I've lost it now. Here we go. Okay, so what do you remember? Cicero. Cicero, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. In Western translation theory, what was the contribution of Cicero? Did he consolidate the word-for-word translation method popular in ancient Rome? Did he translate the speeches of Greek orators in a word-for-word fashion, or did he translate the speeches of Greek orators through creative imitation?
Third one?
I remember the third one, creative imitation.
Anybody disagree? Let's see.
No.
Yes. Next one. In Western translation theory, what translation method did Saint Jerome say he was using? Did he prefer word for word? Did he prefer sense for sense? Or did he prefer sense for sense over word for word translation, except in the translation of the Bible?
That one. Third one.
I said, yeah, okay.
Everybody agrees? Yep.
Something we remember from this chapter is this one.
Yes. So Dao An, or Dao An, writing about the translation of the Buddhist sutras into Chinese, which of the following does he note as difficulties? It can be more than one. Directing the message to a new audience, changing the purpose of the text, or the special status of the source text.
1 and 3.
1 and 3.
Yeah, I agree.
Oh, you're very fast. All right.
It's okay, you didn't get much sleep, Katerina, you said so. Maybe you're a little
extra fast.
said you're slow today. 1 and 3?
It's okay.
Because we discussed it last week, so we remember.
Yes.
We did, yeah. And we also briefly touched on this last week, I think. What was a key difficulty for the Arab translators of Greek scientific texts in the Abbasid period? Was it ascertaining the truth of the source texts? Was it whether to translate, borrow, or explain technical terms? Or was it to ensure stylistic consistency?
The second.
I would say
Because
second
it
too.
was the scientific texts, which
We
were
were
very
talking about
specific.
terms in that one
Yes, it was the same. Yeah.
We were talking about neologism.
yeah, that's the word.
Yeah.
I was just about to ask Santiago if he remembered.
Yeah, I clearly didn't. I really didn't. I had no idea. I remember asking you. Yeah,
Exactly, yeah. Okay, yeah. So we're basically talking about the neologisms, which of course we also have in our Buddhist text, don't we? With all these, talking about karma and metta and things like this, using these words in English, so or in Spanish.
And thusness.
Thusness.
Yes.
Yes.
And this kind of things.
These kind of things. Mindfulness even is really,
Yes, right. Yeah.
It was a word with a bit different meaning beforehand, but it wasn't very common, and now it's just everywhere. Okay, now what was the importance of the translation method of Martin Luther? Did he intersperse German with Latin, raising the profile of German? Did he translate into everyday German, helping to strengthen the German language? Or did he translate into a highly formal German, helping to strengthen German?
I think the second.
Yep.
Yeah, me too.
I agree.
With meaning.
Katerina, what do you think?
Well, in this chapter today, is this the chapter today? It was a word for word, but with the meaning. But account for the meaning, not word for word. Sorry, account for the meaning. Where is it, account for meaning?
We're on Luther at the moment. We're talking about whether he.
Yes,
question,
that's it.
so
Account for the meaning. Mhm.
it's this one. He translated into everyday German. That's what you're saying? Yeah. So in the chapter they were talking about vernacular, yeah, the everyday language, the vernacular.
Yeah.
So again, we see here, this is a translation choice. We could frame it as a translation choice. What do we do as a translator? But this was, of course, something with a much wider implication, yeah, because this was highly political. This was part of his power struggles with the church in Rome, and the power that was exercised by. Yeah, so it's the impact of translation should not be underestimated. We're having big cultural effects here. Dryden proposed 3 methods of translation. Which one corresponds to literal or word for word? We'll be looking at this a bit later as well.
Metaphrase.
Sorry?
Metaphrase.
Literal metaphrase.
Metaphrase. Yes.
Metaphrase and word for word. It's paraphrase. No, sorry,
Paraphrase or
no,
metaphrase?
sorry. The paraphrase.
Word for word metaphrase.
Yeah, so literal and word for word are the same here, yeah? So we're
Okay, metaphrase, yeah.
yeah. Yep. And Tytler's laws of translation. Which one is the most important? Accuracy to the source text content, preservation of the author's way of writing, or the naturalness of the target language expression?
I would say the first.
Okay.
I think, because he gives attention to the author, which would be both, but we cannot choose two, right?
No, this one is just one, yeah.
So I would be a bit hesitant between the first and the second.
Okay.
Because he wanted to preserve the spirit of the author.
The others said the first one?
Although
Content?
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Let's have a look, see what the answer is here. I'll select the first one and then we'll see.
that's okay.
So according to the test, the first one. But
I do see Katarina's point.
Yeah. The question is the most important. Of course.
yeah. We can go to the book and have a look where they wrote the word most, but
But actually, yeah, if you don't write the same thing as the source text, the content is not the same. It's difficult to go to the next ones as a translation, I find.
The way of writing.
Yeah, but first you need to have the same content. Isn't
Interesting.
it?
Interesting claim, yeah. What do you think, everybody else? Can you preserve the way of writing without preserving the content?
I think you could.
Yeah, I think also. Like a same author writing 2 different works.
Yeah, but in your translation, the first thing you check, what is it? Is that you have all of your text is there.
As a translation, yes, as a
Okay.
translator.
That's
Yeah.
what I was meaning. Yeah, the first thing you check is that your text is all there.
Yeah, because that's what you think is the most important, and
Ah,
it probably is.
so
But there could be some people who, there are some translators I don't want to name, but who prefer to keep the style rather than the accuracy.
okay. So they can take out paragraphs and things like that from the source text.
Whole paragraphs I don't know, but certain expressions and parts of sentences.
Ah, okay, you see, I didn't even question that. Okay, it's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, this is actually what someone was saying in one of the videos. That's it looked like they were like in the conferences in United States, transmission and translation. That yeah, they were talking about going astray from the literal, but it was because everyone is putting such an emphasis on being accurate on the first point. And so this was taken as something that is always there. So it just like you did, but there are some people who don't think that way. And there are some contexts where it is pretty impossible. Just like when there was this translator of, what's his name? Changurumoche, who was not able to take notes. And the only thing that he was able to do is kind of flow into what Changurumoche was saying, because he spoke for 10, 20 minutes and keep like the general style, and then try to give back the whole, as much message as he could remember. But obviously there was missing things.
Yeah, I get the point as an interpreter, but when you
Yes.
have the text in front of you,
Yes. Yeah.
I would say,
Oh,
For
yeah,
example,
Mm.
sorry, Christian, go ahead.
well, I was saying that I think it's even one of the procedures of a translator to kind of omit things. So it's not that it's completely a no-no in translation. It's just that you should not go to it too often. But there are many times when, like, I don't know, yesterday we were talking about the dragon instead of thunder. So
yeah,
maybe a translator might want to just keep out the dragon and change the meaning to keep something that is more readable.
yeah, I don't mean necessarily that each word and particle needs to be the translation, but the text content.
Yeah. But if you take away the image of the dragon, then you take away a lot of the culture that is brought by it as well. So you take content out.
I'm thinking of something I was reading about people translating into Arabic. And so you have sort of novels with lots of sex scenes. And so these they can't be published like that in certain countries. So the book will be translated, the style, the way of writing, whatever it is, a spy novel or something. But they'll just miss out the sex scenes, or there'll be something slightly modified added in there, so that you have to leave certain things out because of publishing restrictions and things like this. So maybe that comes under this topic as well. Anyway, we'll be looking at we're comparing, those things as well later. Yan Fu,
Question of memory.
who speaks Chinese? So is it Da, Xin, Ya?
I don't think, I think, the third one.
Yeah, I'm sure it is the third one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice.
Yes, the elegance or gracefulness.
Of German, yes, yeah.
Sounds Chinese, like not.
And now real German, Schleiermacher. What is his preferred? Was it him? I think it was a him. Transferred, I don't know, translation strategy. To move the reader towards the writer, to move the writer towards the reader, or to find a balance?
The first one.
Towards the writer.
Yes. Yeah, I remember because I thought, well, that looks like what I would be doing.
Does everybody agree? The first one?
Shelley Smasher. Druption.
You're not sure.
So a Schleier is like a veil, yeah. So maybe this,
okay.
it's maybe it comes from the profession, the veil maker. I don't know. Let's see. Yes. Okay. So you obviously all read the book. Not that I really needed to test that. I trust you. So I gave you the task of comparing. What was the task? Comparing those different sort of tables of principles, yeah?
It's to make a visual comparison. I run out of time before I make a
Okay.
but I think one of the things that struck me the most in the similarities was how much conveying how much the authenticity was placed first in most of them, or in all of them, of just how much the first thing is to get the thing right, and then you can talk about other things. And of course you can talk about how you get things right, but the actual idea of getting it right, whether word for word or sense for sense or whatever, not with this, but whatever, that this was like the top thing in so many of them, and I think in all of them, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. Does anybody have a nice visual presentation they want to share with us via the screen? No, you don't have time for that.
No.
Yeah. Okay. How should we do this? Shall I call up? Oh, let's just. What are we comparing? Anne, Dole, Teitler, and Yan Fu. Similarities and differences.
I have them at least like together in a document, all four of them. Just point it out if that helps you.
Okay, yeah. If you have it all on the screen, that would be useful.
One second.
Wait, because I'm still in prehistoric mode.
Yes, no worries. I have lots of paper here. You can't see it because it's all on the desk, but I plan in paper. I have the book as a book, a real book.
Yeah,
So.
that make a difference. Yeah.
Oh, nice. Well done, Santiago. Yeah. It's very small for some reason.
Oh, 1 second. So it's the.
There we go. Yeah. Although I can't hear you now.
That one's. I didn't quite understand. Special status as the communicative work of so many followers.
Wait a minute. Sorry, I've just got a sound problem here.
I think if I remember correctly, it was because of like the sutras were kind of for so many people working on it and passing them and everything, they had become holy somehow, I think. I don't remember.
Sorry, can you repeat that, Santiago? I had a sound problem. I'm back now.
What I remember from that one's from, I think, the last reading we did, was that it was because of the sutras, they had been worked on and like kind of this by so many past peers or monks or whatever they had created. It had a special kind of holiness to it. That's what I kind of remember.
Anybody else?
Yeah, that's what I remember also, that there have been a lot of comments,
The commentaries, yeah.
commentaries and things like that.
And also the what it says there, sort of the cumulative work, so that the original text perhaps isn't actually there, you know, because it was written down much later. And
so that's what it's referring to by saying cumulative work, is the fact that it was kind of remembered and put down in writing by different people.
that's how what I understood. Yes, you know, cumulative is sort of like that. It would be, you know, that something starts and then something is added to it, something is added to it, something is added to it. It accumulates.
So more than the kangyur, it'd be more like the tengyur if we want to make like a comparison to what he was describing, or is that off?
I don't think necessarily so. I think it's you know, it's what you said before with all of the comments, but even the actual sort of, you know, the text of the sutra itself is not, it's not like we have, you know, the leaves that it was originally written on, because it wasn't originally written. It was, you know, spoken. You know, the author didn't leave us a copy, but it was pieced together. So even this core text, even the text of the sutra, is a cumulative work, because you know, we can to some little degree, some of the works of Shakespeare even are like this, because for some of them there are quite complete sort of manuscripts of the play, but for others there are sort of you know, different versions, because he never wrote it really down all at once. He wrote sort of the words for this actor, the words for that actor, the words for the other actor, and then there were people in the audience who were sort of making their own notes because they wanted to sell copies of the play. So there are different versions, and then these were all sort of compiled into a complete authoritative version by someone later. Sometimes it was within his lifetime, other times, you know, later scholars. So I think that's what part of the word cumulative means, and the other part is the fact that things were added to it, you know, actually added onto it, like comments and introductions and things like that.
Okay.
So also the opposite, that sometimes people just cut it because they don't want to repeat words and things like that. Or they cut because it's culturally different.
Well, that's for the translations, right? Here we're talking about the source text.
Yes, I'm talking about the translation. What he Dawans talks about being the losses.
Yes, but the third point talks only about the source text.
Here.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
with Da'an, we see a very you know, a focus on the source text, but also the first point, you know, directing it to a new audience.
Yeah.
Is this something, you know, as is something you identified as a similarity or as a difference with the other sets of principles here?
I think that the fact of taking into account the readership and the effect of the text on the audience was kind of new, right? Because otherwise they were only, they were not really concerned about the effect of this text on the reader, but rather to be faithful and to have something that is complete. Maybe it's because the Buddhist text or sutras were meant as tools to have an impact on the mind of the person reading. So it's already kind of how do you say, result oriented or effect oriented, which may not have been the case for the Bible, for example, where it is meant to depict the truth.
I think the fourth point of Dole probably may have same consequences. Translators should avoid Latinate and unusual forms.
Yeah.
That takes into account also the audience, the readers.
Right, yeah.
Yep.
And avoiding the word for word. Because I think those 2 points would go in that direction as well. Although not explicitly.
What could there be another motivation for points 3 and 4 from Dole? So maybe he's not thinking about the reader or the effect of the text. Maybe there's another motivation for this.
What does Latinate mean?
Latinate.
I would just say that it's sort of an adjective from Latin, but it would cover a word that's not actually a Latin word, but a word that's derived from the Latin as well. So a lot of words in English are derived from Latin, but they're not Latin anymore. You know, they're an English word. Either they've changed or they've become subject to English grammar or something like this. But they're still, like, you know, misogynist. It's still it's from Latin or Greek, but it's now an English word, and it's not, you know, we're not just taking a word. So you would say that, you know, like karma is, you could say, would be a Sanskrit word, but karmic would be a Sanskritate. Not that word exists, but you know what I mean. You've taken it and you've made it English.
Okay, I see.
I thought it was to use the Latin form, like instead of talking about an apple tree, you would give the Latin name to make it look like very clever, you know.
That would come under it as well, I think. Yeah.
Latinate.
But I mean, if I was talking about using the Latin name of an apple tree, then I would just say the translator should avoid Latin forms.
Okay.
I wouldn't say Latinate.
Latinate includes also that saying, like karmic.
Yeah.
Okay. So you don't actually translate, you take the original word and then you can accommodate it to your own.
Okay, yeah, like Buddhic
language.
nature.
Yes, yeah.
In Spanish, yeah, it's done a lot. Naturaleza
Buddhic, yes, exactly, yes.
Yeah. Okay, Sanskritinate.
No, I don't know whether that word exists, but I was just trying to find a parallel. Couldn't think of a Latin example to use. But you know, just even like, I think, is anima Latin or Greek? I never know whether these words are Greek or Latin.
Anima, I think it's Greek, because spirit is the Latin. Spiritus is the Latin.
Yeah. So then, you know, so Latin would be spiritus. But something like inspire is an English word that has come from the Latin
and has evolved into actual English. Yeah.
Yeah. So then maybe sort of, you know, but that would, you know, it's a spectrum, because the word inspire or inspiring is not something which then I would criticize as being Latinate, because this is just a normal English word now. It wouldn't look, you wouldn't need to be, it just wouldn't stand out on the page as being, sort of Latinate. But at some point it may have been still quite Latin, and then at some point it just became normal English. Linguistics is often like this. It's sort of, sometimes it's not quite sort of black and white.
But all these rules per se, I was thinking, don't make much sense, because it depends on what the purpose is. Like Dole, you're asking, why does he do that? It's because he wants to read the classics through another point of view, like more humanistic. And he did care about the development of French language. So he wants to use more French and less foreign words. So all these rules about translation actually depend on what do you translate for, what is the purpose of the translation, who do you translate for. So as I was reading all these rules for translation, I thought it depends what your text is, what the purpose is. Yeah. So can you do general rules? I felt a little bit like reading advice on how to have a happy marriage. It's either you give very general advice, be kind, respect each other. If you go into detail, it depends on each person. So I thought the advice for translation, it felt a little bit like that.
And I think it's still the case, right? Even today. Yeah. Because commercial translation is not going to be the same as literal translation, but still it's interesting to see the different point of views.
Yeah. To see... But, I mean, they all depend on what the purpose is then in the translation. Yes. So
yeah, of course.
So all of them are going to defend their own, the way they use it. That's what I meant. It cannot be difficult to make general.
Yeah.
Okay, well, maybe you've identified a difference there. The difference between these people and what their overarching purpose was. Can you scroll down, Santiago, to Tyler's?
Of course.
So what have we got? So who was Tyler, and what was his main focus then? What do we think?
In this page, they refer to Tyler being more reader-oriented, and it is funny because after saying that, and he's a bit different from Dole, they state these three aspects, which actually refer to the source text, right? Let me tell you the page says where this is, the page in the book where this is. They say Tyler defines a good translation as being oriented towards a target language reader. They have a quotation, right? And then they put these three general laws, right? But you get the idea that he also cares for the source text, the original work, the style of the author, manner.
Yeah, but talking about style and manner of writing is going away from word for word translation. So he's caring more about how the translation will be received than how it was written. And that shows he cares more about the reader.
But I think
at the same character should be of the same with that of the original. Yes. He's caring very much here with the original. That's why.
But not the word, because the main kind of debate was between word and sense for sense, and he goes rather to sense for sense. So
yes,
he would not make literal translations, and so that means he's kind to the reader, not to the author.
He's, yeah, but nevertheless, he cares a
otherwise
lot
he wouldn't
about
be able
the
to say.
soul. It's
Yes.
like when they kind of create these very contrasting things, which are not so simplistic. That's what I'm trying to
Yes.
to
Yeah.
point out. They are not simplistic, like saying,
No.
oh, one is more that and this. In fact, they have a mixture of.
Yeah, this is something that I was seeing from the right beginning until today, and still continues, is this kind of two poles that we always have of being fidelity to the message and fidelity to the reader, or word for word or sense for sense. And you're always kind of struggling in between these two extremes. And I think, I don't know, but it looks to me that we'll always be in this position as long as we'll be trying to translate.
I understand Katerina to mean something different, Jupchen. I understand maybe that Katerina is saying it's not as simple as this, that there isn't simply this polarity which you've described. So
yeah, what I meant to say is that because
the
of
authors in a kind of polarity, while the author, while you go and see, and it's not such. I mean, we cannot say that Tyler is completely reader oriented.
Yeah. What I meant to say is that exactly it's the same thing. It's because we'll always be stuck with this dichotomy. We cannot be completely on one direction or completely on the other. We'll always be somewhere in the middle.
Exactly.
So it's slightly more on the left or slightly more on the right. And yeah, that makes Titler's difference, I think. But he can't be totally, because otherwise he wouldn't be translating anymore. If he was only oriented to the reader, then he would be making another book.
Making an adaptation. I think we last week we had the word adaptation.
Right, adaptation.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to Jan Fu. And
and then I had a kind of a thought. I was wondering when we were talking about Dole, I didn't quite get whether he was completely against word for word rendering up to the point that he would kind of dismiss this as a solution for translation or not.
Anybody got an answer to that one?
Because his point was to try to push forward French language, right? So kind of to push the kind of French natural way of expressing. And so as long as we kept literal translation, then we're not completely natural in French. But this is the feeling that I had, that he was completely against word for word, but I didn't quite manage to check that out. Yes, the third point. Yeah. If he was really against that or not, or if he accepted that sometimes we might use word for word translations.
I think this is the point we can ask about all of them, isn't it? Is, you know, they are offering their principles, but you know, to what degree do they all accept that these are principles, and that sometimes you know. One of the interesting points I find also is, you know, you can set a principle for the text as a whole, but then you can recognize that within that text there are certain passages where you need to move a bit in the other direction.
Yeah.
So you can have a sort of a guiding principle, but then occasionally you can, you know, deviate from that if you need to.
Right. Yeah. Sounds very practical, and you might have encountered situations like that.
Yes. But again, I think we're yeah, I think I mean I can certainly hear from what Nerea is saying, what Katerina is saying, that we, you know, we're beginning to see that that we're not just talking about a simple polarity here. You know, we can say that, for instance, that reader friendly is similar to you know, sense for sense. because word for word is not very reader friendly. So we can say that reader friendly is similar to sense for sense, but if we start saying that reader friendly is sense for sense, then, and we say that reader friendly is never word for word, then, you know, we're making a mistake which later on will cause problems for us, because we're forcing ourselves into a simple polarity when actually we've got sort of, you know, a graph with corners where we can move off towards here where it's reader friendly, but also word for word, you know, because sometimes I think especially, you know, in terms of, you know, even just thinking, for example, thinking about sort of little guidebooks for tourists, you know, there are times when you need to totally get away from the source language, because, you know, ça va, you know, in French, you know, that goes, you know, I mean, it's absolutely no use whatsoever. So when you're dealing on the level of sort of idioms or on expressions that you know, totally different, but it's actually sometimes then useful for, even at that level of tourists, you know, even it's sometimes useful to actually see what it really does mean word for word, just so that I can then understand how you build the negative, you know, so I can say, no, I'm not very well today, ça va pas, you know. And it's like, if I know that this is what it means, it might make it clearer to me. So that the reader friendly can sometimes, you know, be the opposite of what you're, you know, you know, and even at the level of a word, if I'm writing a text, you know, translating a text, I can sometimes, you know, put in brackets, you know, the word, the literal word translation of what something is, if it helps to understand what comes next. So I think, you know, just sort of, we have to sort of start seeing all of these principles as applying at the same time. So we have different sort of polarities that are operating in parallel, and then we start to be able to get away from this simple dichotomy. Especially when we get down to the Jan Foot and his three principles, I think we've got something far more broad, yeah, that we can start applying. You know, we've got almost like qualities which we can start applying now instead of sort of polarities. Do you agree?
To some extent, I would still see faithfulness as being closer to the literal, and expressiveness or fluency as closer to the target language.
Because your faithfulness is related to word, not to the meaning.
To the source text.
But faithfulness to the meaning,
yes.
right?
It
So
could be both, yeah.
Faithful to the meaning, that's what I say. I mean, it's not being faithful to necessarily to the words.
To the syntax and to the, more global faithfulness.
I think that's what this chapter at the beginning points out in the history of theories, right? That sometimes the concepts change. What it is faithfulness, what it is something, what it is another.
Yeah, they even have to put it in the like this, and it now refers to what we call this and what we call that and all that.
But it's true that it's much more general, much the same broader terms. And then you have this elegance that is brought in that was not there before.
Does elegance find any sort of parallel at all in the other three?
I would say eloquently to avoid clumsiness in the font of delay.
Eloquent and not clumsy, yeah.
Or it should have the ease.
Yes.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yes, I
is.
mean, you have to write correctly, and I mean,
I wonder
of
if
course, then to what degree can you
Yeah.
write? How that's the things of the limits that we were talking about, right? I mean, sometimes if you keep too much literal, then it might not even transmit the meaning. But and if you want to transmit the meaning, but the language is not rendered correctly, then it won't fulfill its aim. So it's always a battle. No?
I think elegance is kind of, it has a different role in that, right?
Yeah, I suppose yes. But maybe the Chinese have a different approach, no? Because as we were talking the other day about the translation of the Don Quixote, I mean, maybe the place that elegance and gracefulness has in Chinese literary culture is different from our own, right?
Yeah, that's why he uses that as a criteria, because elegance in India in Sanskrit was completely different from what he found elegant as a Chinese. That's why he kind of chopped off so many places, because he didn't find it elegant.
What didn't he find elegant?
He didn't find the repetitions of the sutras elegant, so he just chopped them off, cut them off, and kept it only once, because that was elegant for him.
Yeah, that was what I wondered, what it means for Chinese. And I was wondering, because we were mentioning Drupchen the other day, like for Tibetans, for example, written Tibetan should be written according to certain rules. There's a certain standard, and the rest, you don't write it. You don't write your diary in Tibetan.
Yes, yeah.
So I wonder, for Chinese, maybe there's also these special rules for certain, style in writing.
Yeah.
So like avoiding repetition, like you're saying. And
yes, yeah. This is for French also. It seems to be a very strong rule. And in French, in the same sentence or one sentence after the other, if you have a repetition, then it's never accepted. You just can't have it. Whereas in Tibetan, it's completely normal. And you will never think of making a complex sentence just to avoid putting the same subject 2 times. You just make 2 sentences and it's completely fine.
I have this so often when I'm translating, it's like, because with two languages like English and German, there's quite a lot of cases where one word maybe has 2 or 3 in the other language, which are all sort of almost synonyms, but subtle differences, and then going back in the other way. And so I'll very often see two sentences where there's 2 different words, and I'll be thinking, why did the author use this synonym? Because they would both be translated with the same word in English. So I have to sort of think, is there a reason why they chose this 2 different words? Could it be this and could it be that? And then so often, really, it's just that they wanted to avoid repeating themselves. That's. But you read so much into that. You sort of start philosophizing about why they use the word. And it was simply because the first word already appeared up here.
I really remember, based on that, one of the first videos we saw on the translation studies, where they were talking, they put, like, it was full of Buddhist translators, and there was the 2 words that were very similar, but one said like woman and one said girl, and they were like really going into it. And then Ringo Tulkurin was there, he just raised hands like, well, he already said girl, so he had to say woman then. And it was like after like 20 minutes of just really like high words and the how of what and the context and all that, is like, well,
and the culture
and the culture
philosophy.
and all of this, and it's like, well, he said it once, so he didn't want to repeat himself, probably.
Yeah,
but
yes, I remember that part. Yes.
Yeah.
But it's strange that they say this in terms of Western culture, in terms of poetry, because it's not right. I mean, poetry always had a repetition. Medieval poetry was based in repetition. So we do have a tradition in repetition in
There
poetry.
is,
I mean, not
yes.
so much in the epic or when the novel appeared, but when the novels, prose appeared. But in poetry, we have a long history of still
Yes,
contemporary
but
poetry.
the question
so
is how much. The question is how much. Not so much that we have or not have. It's how much, because there's a level on top of which you can't go, and that limit for Tibetan and Sanskrit is much higher.
And also maybe how this applies to a philosophical text. So if you have an essay on philosophy, how poetical is this going to be in German or in French, and how poetical is it going to be in Chinese? Suspect the Chinese philosophical text there's more emphasis on the poetry of the language, simply because of the nature of the language.
And there's kind of an irony also from the Chinese translations of the sutras, because they kind of chopped off so many repetitions because they wanted to be elegant and readable. And it's actually in the book, it says at some point that if it's not elegant, then it's not readable. So it was one of the criteria of the Chinese translators. And then my brother was telling me that modern day Chinese people, when they read translation of sutra, they want not to be able to understand. And that is a criteria for good translation.
Oh, really?
So if they understand, they say, no, it's not well translated. I want a different version.
It's too clear.
More literary, with more complex words that I can't understand.
this is a comic cartoon on translation.
It reminds me of teacher training in Dharamsala, where I was trying to explain how a good teacher can, explain things simply to their students, and the Tibetans were looking at me going, "No, a good teacher you don't understand because they're so clever." Like, okay, we have a difference.
That's elegant.
It's hilarious.
Okay, let's take a 10-minute break. And when we come back, I want to move on and have a look at what our German friend Schleiermacher was saying.
See you guys in 10.
Okay, see you in 10 minutes.
Okay.
Okay, so shall we resume? Just before we move on to our German friend, I wanted to ask a question which I must have to admit I don't know the answer to myself. I've forgotten. Based on what Katharina was saying, and that is when we look at these different principles from these different theorists that we just looked at, how much of it might be dependent on what texts, what genres they were working with. So I have to admit that I can't remember what really they were working with, like Titler, for example. Do you remember?
No, I don't. Let's see.
For the Chinese, I found the information for Yanfu, but still looking. Dole, for example. Okay, for delay, it's on page 44. His objective was the classical teachings. So the Greek and Latin classics.
For who's? For who?
That
Sorry.
was Delay. Delay was
I
seems
think
to
it.
have been,
I think it's similar for Tyler. It's just on Wikipedia, but it says mostly Greek and Roman studies.
yeah.
Like
For
I
to
would
recover,
imagine the classics.
rediscover, it is there in the 45. They were rediscovering classics, structural independence of the new vernacular French language, yeah.
Hmm.
But also serving the purposes of the French language.
Oh, there's an interesting kind of.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No. Go ahead.
Just a little thing. It's here. It says it has been it's talking about Tyler wrote a treatise called Essays of the Principle of Translation. It has been argued that Yang Fu's famous translator dictum of fidelity, clarity, and elegance came from Tyler.
Hmm.
Just interesting.
And what text was Tytler mainly translating or reading? It's not clear. Is it from the book? So it was like end of the 1700s. Yeah. For Yanfu, it then goes on page 46 at the bottom. It says that it's quite interesting because it says that Yanfu was trying to translate more modern European thought. And so some have argued that his theories of translation were sort of a bit awkward because he was still trying to use a more sort of archaic Chinese style to translate this modern European genres.
he was a professor at Universal History in Greek and Roman antiquities.
Who?
So I suppose maybe he was translating for thinking about classical, yeah.
That Heitler?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Professor of Universal History. He was a Greek and Roman antiquities. So.
I wonder if that's, what do you think, if that's an issue here, because if we're translating, I mean, you know, as you are, you know, these very old texts from you're dealing with a source text and also a source language, which is quite far away. And so this discrepancy between sort of author friendly and reader friendly may be larger than, you know, myself translating a modern German text into a modern English text. You know, what do you think?
Sorry, could you repeat that again, Craig?
I'm just wondering whether some of these dichotomies, these issues, these principles are coming from the type of the genres that they are dealing with. So we're looking still at people who are translating the classics. So these very old style, very old language, very old contents, and they are translating for readers now. So there's a big difference there.
Yeah. I certainly remember, at least on a more kind of modern note, on again the videos of the translation meetings that the Buddhist translators had. You had a lot of people who were translating poetry and things like that. They went really, really in depth into that because that was what they were doing. So like a lot of their talks of what they were doing and all of that, or even if it was like something completely independent, if the subject was completely, they would come back to that and they would talk about how to render things a certain way. They would talk about how the things should flow from your mouth, how it should sound and all that. So I think that was really interesting. It shows how much they were working on, and it really affected what their perspectives were.
We're coming back into or we're bringing in again that issue of poetry we were talking about. No, I was just wondering whether we could find some similarities there.
Were you thinking about translating not only the text, but also some part of the culture that is necessary for the reader to understand the source text?
I was wondering whether the principles that we were looking at, you know, from
Yes.
Tytler, from Delay, from Yamfu, whether these principles were genre dependent or not.
I would say that yes, because like Delay, his idea of not wanting to make word-for-word translation has something to do with his agenda, personal agenda, as a translator. And I think that since it is it was organically evolving, and all these theories are taken from translator's introduction and things like that, that were not meant to be theorizing translation studies, etc. So it's each one of them is trying to make sense of what he's doing in his context. I think that's most probably until the translation studies became like a discipline of its own. Until then, everyone was talking about what he or she was doing independently. I think that's how things evolved.
Yeah. It's interesting. I was reading how the translators' prefaces, have almost disappeared. So nowadays you hardly see any of these translators' prefaces. The translators become very invisible. Whereas in the past, it was, like the distant past, it was almost always there would be a translator's preface saying this. Yeah. So.
Yeah, that radically kind of contrasts with the Tibetans when they translated from Sanskrit. There's never a single word that's coming directly from the translator, except this colophon that says such person with such pandit, with such Indian person translated this text at this place.
Mm-hmm.
But besides that, there's never any introduction, never contextualization, nothing.
I have quite a modern paper on the transparency of translators, where transparency means this, do you see them or not? Which we will definitely, I'm just trying to find the right slot for it, when to look at it. But we'll come back to that one. But it's connected to what I think Schleiermacher has to say. So if we look at his quote on, where are we? Page 48, the top of page. Because it's not actually his quote that I wanted to look at as such. Just below that, in the book, it says that Schleiermacher's method is to give the reader, through the translation, the impression he would have received as a German reading the work in the original language.
Mm-hmm. I remember that thing. Huh?
I had to read that twice or three times to actually realize, wow, okay, I really like that. That really sort of jumped out at me. So let's imagine this, we've got someone as gifted and talented as Drupchen who has learnt Tibetan to the level where he can read these Tibetan texts. So this is, let's call Drupchen French for the sake of this example. We'll pretend he's a pure Frenchman. We have this pure Frenchman sort of, reading a Tibetan text in Tibetan. So he's not understanding this text in the same way as a Tibetan. He's understanding it as a Frenchman reading this Tibetan. He's not understanding it in the same way as a 14th century or 12th century Tibetan. He's understanding it as a 20th century or 21st century Frenchman reading this text, but he is directly reading it. So this is like it's a little bit, you have the Tibetan and you have the Frenchman. They're both reading this text. They're both going to understand it in a different way. So I think sometimes when we are sort of at the extremes of our dichotomies, we are thinking that as a translator, we need to produce something that is like this, the Tibetan, reading the text. So we need to produce something so that our ordinary French person will get the same experience as the Tibetan, reading this text. But Schleiermacher is saying, no, we're just trying to make it so that our ordinary French person can have the same experience as Drupchen,
As someone who understands a little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
And this is kind of, and this is, I don't know if this has evolved, if this idea has remained until today, or do you know about that?
I didn't follow that up, no.
Okay, yeah.
What do you think?
Very difficult to measure.
Yeah,
What type of person would read? A person who has gone to school, a level, who has read a lot, who doesn't like reading. I think I don't know, it's very difficult to get into interpreting how would a person receive. And I think with words, we learn them and we get a flavor, we get words we like more, we like less, we associate feelings to words. I find it very difficult to try to guess how would a person receive a text or a book.
Yeah, but that's exactly the Schleiermacher's point, is that I can't guess how Tibetan will read it. So I can't try to bring my reader to a native Tibetan's understanding, because I myself don't know how the Tibetans understand it. But on the other side, me being a French person, I can certainly bring my own understanding as a French person of the Tibetan text to another French person, because this is something that I know directly. I have first
Can be a
experience.
mediator in between the two cultures.
Yes.
Yeah. Like you understand what a French person wouldn't catch in the Tibetan in between the lines, or something like that is what you mean.
I don't think I would try to. I don't know what Schleiermacher actually meant, but what I would understand of it is, for example, when I read poetry or when I read a complex sentence, this complexity, I will want the one that I was feeling, even though a Tibetan might not find it complicated. But since I myself, as a French reader, was find it complex, then when I translate into French, I will turn it into something complex as well.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
So actually, what I'm not trying to replicate the effect of the source text on the original audience. So I'm not trying to see what the author's intended audience felt or heard or understood, but I'm just trying to replicate in my translation what I personally get from it. So on one side, I find it biased as a goal for translator, because it's realistic, because I do what I can, but as an objective, I find it a little bit low, because you're limiting yourself and you're not trying to be to have the same effect on your reader as the author has on his own reader.
Santiago, what do you think?
Well, I think that I think that inevitably when you get into whenever you have a certain understanding of whatever, depending on how you're doing it, whenever if for example, when Drupshan's saying that he's French, saying like, but he understands Tibetan, I agree that he can never really express how a complete Tibetan might say it, but he might express the experience that he knows Tibetan so well that he might express it in a way that's even clearer than how a Tibetan might explain it to other persons. For example, I remember Thupten Jinpa was talking about how sometimes he could understand translated works better than reading something in its foreign language. Like he would read something in English and then he would read something, for example, in German or in French, translated into English, and he said that he could understand the translated part better. So I think there's a give and take. From one side, yes, maybe the understanding of it might be a little bit different, but from the other side, the part that communicates, the part that renders to the reader, I think might be easier or might be better.
Okay. Interesting. Katarina.
Actually, this sentence I had looked at it and I thought this is a bit complicated. But But we are talking about also another thing that the sentence doesn't have, which is we are thinking about us as a reader, and the translator that is thinking of the reader as a reader, and the reception of the source, the kind of reception that the source text would have, right? But he's not considering the impression of the readers of the original source language. He's just considering the impression of the readers that are going to read the translation. So the relationship is with the writer, the writer, and not we are not making a parallel to readers of the source language, and it's a different, it's a different dynamic. As translators, are we thinking about, oh, let's think about how would the Tibetans react to this text? But he's not considering that. He's just considering how a German reader would relate to the text, to the writer, right? It's a different dynamic. But
can I give an example? Let's imagine that in Tibetan something is taken as an insult, and the same sentence is taken as a kind of a compliment in French. This happened actually. I saw this happen. It was a Bhutanese person a Bhutanese monk, who came to the Odoing and said to someone, "Oh, you're fat. How nice." So he was intending a compliment. And then on the other hand, this Western woman felt it was an insult. So here in this, what Schlemacher would be saying is that I don't want to take into account how the Bhutanese listener to this Bhutanese person's sentence would feel, which means I don't want to take into account that it might be taken as compliment, but I want just to give to my reader, as a translator, the impression of a Westerner listening to this Bhutanese sentence, which is an insult. So he doesn't want to translate it as, so Schlemacher doesn't want to translate it as a compliment, but because he knows that a German will not take it as a compliment. But he wants to translate it as an insult because that's how German would take it. So as a translator,
it's not so much the reader who is taking it, but if you know the language and the writer, you will try to look into his intention. So you're relating to his intention. You're not caring so much if you were. That's why the sentence is a bit.
But in this context,
I have a question. I have a question for Drupchen.
Yes.
Because the example I think is very useful for understanding this. What we're trying to do now. So as a Frenchman who has learnt, Tibetan or Donka, the Bhutanese language, in this situation, are you probably already going to understand that? Are you going to understand that as an insult or a compliment?
Yeah, I will see that actually it could be taken both ways. I will see as a translator, in my situation of a translator, I will see that he meant, the speaker meant a compliment, and I'm already seeing that the reader or the person listening is going to take it as an insult. And so I'm in between and I have to make a decision.
Yeah, so my question is, as the the reader who has learnt Tibetan,
yes,
you will probably already know that this is a compliment.
Yes, yeah, this is something I already know.
Yeah,
yes.
So it is your experience that I'm trying to recreate as a translator.
My experience. Okay.
But it's a compliment, and then you have to find in French the corresponding meaning, right?
Yes,
because you're not going to be literal, because you're not conveying the meaning. So we will find the expression, and then the French person reads in that way, which is the way that the writer intended.
Yes, but in that case, why would we say that? What does Schemacher says that he wants to understand in a way that the German would understand it? Because since I already know the culture, I know he intended a compliment, so I'll take it as a compliment. So actually, I'm reacting like a normal native Tibetan. I'm not reacting like a Frenchman or a German.
Yes, it's strange.
So
that
that's why I'm understanding it in that way, in this sentence. Because if I'm culturally adapting myself to the situation, then I'm kind of emulating a native speaker.
Okay, I have another example. I mean, I think this is you know, I think this is really interesting. So we're just going to stick to it with one more example.
Yes. Yeah.
A few years ago, I was involved in a Harry Potter fan community online, and
Nice.
when the I think it was the 6th Harry Potter. So when it was published in English, there was going to be sort of 2 months before the translations appeared in German, French, Spanish, you know, whatever the main languages of the world. So the fan community set about producing their own translation into German. So first of all, they did like a 48-hour translation. Everybody translated 2 pages just so that there was something there. But then they sort of like worked on this over a course of a couple of weeks and produced a really sort of nice, polished, edited translation. And there was one scene which really, you know, sort of, I think is really useful for this. Harry Potter has a house elf called Dobby. And so Harry Potter is in London. They're hiding from the Death Eaters, who are, you know, they have this sort of hidden house. And Dobby wants to make a good impression on Harry because Dobby had done something wrong. And so he's trying to get back into Harry Potter's favor. So he wants to do something really nice for his master. So his master is out, and Dobby cooks him a really nice dinner. So this is sort of typical, sort of what, you know, your mother would cook you if you had a difficult exam or something. You know, it's just like really nice sort of meal. So he's putting this meal on the table for his master. And the example, you know, in the book, it is a steak and kidney pie. Do you know what a steak and kidney pie is?
Can you imagine a pie with steak and kidney inside them?
Yeah, so I mean, probably all vegetarians, but anyway, you know, sort of even for a normal German, who in the normal Germans, you know, nowadays there's lots of vegans and vegetarians, but the German food culture is quite meat centered as well. So, but you know, Germans don't really have pies as such. They don't really have this dish, but they certainly don't eat kidney. This is just sort of. So if you say in German, you know, ein Steak und Nierenpastete, the German just sort of, yeah. So the reaction is sort of, you know, very strange. So a totally different, you know, reaction that it would create in the reader. So how do you translate this into German, you know?
But there my question, Craig, would be, in the Harry Potter book, was the intention was it to make it funny, like that Dobby created this pie that was disgusting, or that would be disgusting for Harry? Or was it that it would be delicious for Harry?
Delicious. This is, you know, Dobby is trying to do something really, really nice for his master.
Yeah, but regardless of what he's trying to do,
he manages. Yeah, he also manages to do that.
Yeah, he does this. This is, you know, in England, if I cooked a steak and kidney pie for my parents would be really, really happy. They would just
Oh,
be
I
like,
see.
"Oh wow, what a
Like the-
wonderful son we have!" You know.
I see. Okay.
Like the English paella.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I got it.
But this is the cultural aspect that we
Yeah.
are talking about. Yeah.
So how would you
Yes,
translate?
So, and that's also
Yes.
a problem, right? We know that.
Yeah.
But in the case of this author, I don't know how to pronounce it.
Schleiermacher?
Schleiermacher.
Schleiermacher.
Yeah. So how would he do it?
Foreignizing. What
how
the
would-
concept of foreignizing applies? How can someone give me an example of this foreignizing? Is this what would you mean foreignizing? Like, okay, we are not saying kidney pie. Let's give the equivalent. What is a delicious dish in Germany or in Portugal, and then put the name. It's not really something. But is this what they are referring to? Foreignizing, or
No, it's the opposite. That's the
it's
opposite.
the opposite?
Yes, that is domesticating, because you're bringing something that is familiar to the reader.
Okay.
So you're domesticating the
So in the case
strange
of the
original. Yes. But yeah, but I mean, according to Schleiermacher, in this situation, what would he do? Because he's talking about a German reader. So it would be like an English reader coming to Germany and having to translate this steak and kidney pie.
So he's Schleiermacher is saying that the German who cannot speak English,
Yes.
when they read the German version of the book, he's trying to give them a similar experience to the German who can speak English.
Ah, okay. So I understood it exactly the opposite. So he's actually doing some cultural adaptation, right?
He would be into adapting, right? He would be into putting
Yes.
paella in Spain or sauerkraut in. Is it sauerkraut in Germany? Sauerkraut.
Oh, dear.
Sauerkraut in Germany.
Yes.
And so
Yes,
what was your
that's what I
solution?
think, because
What was the-
he makes a balance. He's not. He creates a balance in between.
But now I've got the question: would he put the sauerkraut?
Sauerkraut.
Sauerkraut. Sorry. Would he put the sauerkraut if you were translating Harry Potter?
What? This is why I'm asking you. Yeah. What is he saying? Nerea, would you translate it as paella?
Paella.
I was trying to understand what is Schleiermacher saying, but it's not very clear to me yet. But
Could you read it again, Nara? Could you read the sentence again?
What sentence?
Yeah, I have it here. Schleiermacher's method is to give the reader, through the translation, the impression he would have received as a German reading the work in the original language.
And the thing that changes it a bit is as a German reading it in the original German.
But what I understand.
I know, no, because he's German, and he's reading in German. So I think. So in this case, it would be
Foreignizing, alienating. That's what's said below. To achieve this, the translator must adopt an alienating, foreignizing method of translation.
But for example, would we agree that, let's say that Craig, being English, is the one translating Harry Potter. So he's trying to give the reader the same effect as of what he felt, him being English and reading in English, right?
Being English? No. Being English? No.
This is the question. No, I mean, Schleiermacher is trying to give the German reader the same impression as a German who can speak English reading the English book.
And therefore would understand the cultural thing.
Is it?
So this is the crucial question.
As a German who speaks English. not as a German who speaks, not the translator as a German who speaks German, but and English. I think
he
I think I kind of got
Yeah,
all
below it's saying that this bending target language word usage to try to ensure faithfulness to the source text emphasizes the value of the foreign.
Then that
But
would
this
be
is a bit
this.
ambiguous in terms of what we are saying, because to value the foreign would probably we could say, okay, let's keep the kidney pie to value the foreigner. But no, it's not that's being said. To value the foreign is, okay, we have the kidney pie, but the kidney pie is good, and in Germany it's not, so we have to modify it to keep the faithfulness to the source text.
But I
and the faithfulness.
but faithfulness to the first.
We have to keep the kidneys, I think Schleiermacher is saying.
But that is not faithfulness, because that is not rendering the meaning of what is implied there. It's you're not subtly giving, you're not subjectively giving the feeling that
Pido la palabra. I wonder if it doesn't mean that it would be my option within the text. It explains that it's cooking with love, You have the context also. You don't have only the plate. So I think, I wonder if what Schleiermacher means is we keep the source text, so you keep the pie, the kidneys, but you because you expect your reader to understand that there is a cultural difference.
Yeah, I don't think that this really, from what Craig expressed just before, it doesn't seem that, because if it was the case, then the context must be so strongly about Dobby wanting to please that there's no ambiguity left as for whether this is a good or not. And so the reader, German reader, must be forced to accept and like what is happening. But that's not the case, because the reaction of German is just like, oh, what's this? So the context is not enough.
We could use of an example, right?
So, but what I
by one of these translations.
I still don't understand what Schleiermacher means exactly. I understood that he keeps the pie, the kidney pie, and is going to bend the target language, but without changing the source, isn't it? Isn't that what he means?
That's what I understand as well. So it means that he must accept that the effect of it, and basically, if I were to do that, then I would keep steak and kidney pie and put a footnote saying this is something very good.
Something, that's what I understand. Okay, yes.
Then the reader knows how to react, because we're telling him you should react this way.
Yeah.
So it's keeping the foreign aspects.
Yeah.
The foreignizing, in this sense, is keeping the foreign aspects.
Which I find the interesting part in reading foreign literature. If not, I would only read my things. I mean, I don't understand the habit of wanting to change the cultural part. We come back to the purpose of the text, but in a certain way, if you read foreign literature, isn't it to also get that taste of
it's a big debate
of being lost? Yes,
it's a big debate.
Yeah.
Okay, so I deliberately, let that go off in both directions and up and down as well, because I found it really interesting that it's not easy to understand. It's not clear cut. What are we foreignizing? What are we alienating? And this, we started off with the example of, oh, you're fat, and it goes down to just, simple levels of greetings, sort of the classic example of, Americans going, how are you? And just not really expecting an answer, or the, you know, the Tibetans would always ask me where I was going, and I would just think they were nosy. You know, like, why are you asking me where I'm going? You know, until I realized, okay, I just say to the market, and that is basically means, how are you? Fine. You know, where are you going? To the market. Great. You know, it didn't matter if I was going to the market or not. So we're at this level of you know, culture, as you've all pointed out, and you know, I'm not going to say anything that any of you haven't already said, because you've already covered everything. I personally read this page and Schleiermacher's opinion as what the conclusion that we came to in the end, you know, that you bend the target language, or you know, to fit the original, which means you put in steak and kidney pie, because that is bending German, because steak and kidney pie is not really German. You know, I mean, obviously the words would be normal in German, normal words, but it's a concept which you're, you know, you're bending that, because it wouldn't be in a German sentence like that, you know. So you can sort of treat it as that. That's what I understand it. And so you would put in steak and kidney pie because the German who understands English would probably understand that steak and kidney pie is a delicious, nice, homely thing. And if they didn't, then they would be interested in finding that out, you know. And you certainly would not write a book where Dobby, in a hidden house in London, puts sauerkraut on the plate for Harry Potter, because that would just be like, what's happening here? They're in London, they're English, and he's serving up sauerkraut. That would be, you know, that would be silly. So, you know, but I think, you know, we've already discovered that, you know, certain strategies are sometimes the right one, and in other places they might be the wrong one. So we're just, you know, at the level at the moment of understanding the different strategies we have available to us. Great, we've come to the end already of our session today, a few minutes left. Do you have any unanswered questions or objections? Are you happy, Katarina? You had a slightly different opinion at one point.
That would take us another debate. What is
Okay.
The impression that it left me with is that Schleiermacher is basically translating for peer translators, and the only criteria that he has is if other translators understand what he writes, then he's okay. He's happy. Doesn't really care about his readers, because he only thinks about an English person who speaks German.
I
Not
got to that similar conclusion based on the last answer you gave, because the key would be saying whether non-German speakers, non-German, non-English speakers, if he's trying to create the same impression to German non-English speakers. If it's that, then it changes. But if he's trying to create the impression just for German English speakers, then it's what Drupchen is referring to, and it's kind of what I thought the last conclusion was that we ended up saying, that you ended up saying, Craig.
Now I'm confused.
Basically,
I don't understand what you don't understand. So I think I'll try and summarize that that we can look to see, you know, let's take the Harry Potter example. So how does an English child understand the English book? Yeah,
so
that's one.
So
reason.
the English child understands yummy.
Yummy. Yeah.
The German child.
Let me say there are three.
Yeah.
So at the other end, you have a German child who knows nothing about England, nothing about English, and wants to have a book about magic and sorcerers and wizards, and wants to have some food which is yummy. So you can write an adaptation. You can, and it would be sauerkraut. You know,
Mhm.
that would be like creating the same effect for a German reader.
Yeah.
You know?
Sauerkraut, yummy.
Sauerkraut. But somewhere not in the middle, but sort of, towards this end, but not quite at the end, is you've got a German who understands English, who knows a bit about the English culture, has already read the first 5 books, so knows a little bit about Harry Potter, whatever. But, a German who understands English and who is prepared to read a book in which there are these weird and wonderful things that English people do, like wear bowler hats and eat kidneys. Yeah, so you've got this reader.
But then we go back to what Drupchen said. It's basically doing for peer translators.
No, because that's not a translator. That's just someone who is interested in English culture and interested in.
That's what I was going to say. There's also this part of the public accepting that is a
I see.
culture.
Now I got it.
Yeah, but then,
and it's London, and the buildings are different, and in the roads they don't drive the same way, and the food is not the same. So I think there's also all that part of readership that accepts that all that happens in another country, with all the other aspects.
Yeah.
Now I got it.
Then my question is, if this person reads English and knows about Harry Potter and has read already the first 5 volumes, why doesn't he read in the original?
That person will read it in the original, but I'm writing a translation for people who are not like that, but to give them the same effect as someone like that. So I have to assume that this person is still interested in other cultures and still prepared to read a book where there's going to be something a bit weird in it, like, eating kidney. But they're going to recognize that is because it's from another country, another culture.
Okay, yes, yeah. Now I get it. Yeah.
Now, whether or not you need the footnote,
yes,
is a separate question.
Yes,
Yeah.
Basically, it's
maybe
like
just put delicious this pie. You just add the word delicious or something.
Yeah. That's a really elegant solution, I would say. That's a solution.
Yeah.
It's just adding in a delicious in front of it, or a homely, something like this.
Well, anyway, the example of Harry Potter is always a foreignizing in itself. It's nature. It's foreignizing for the majority of us. So, okay. I don't know how much of us fly in sky or things like that, but
another culture, isn't it? We all have to learn how, what the muggles, why calling someone a muggle is an insult or whatever,
Yeah. So basically what he's saying, Schumacher is saying that when you translate, take into account that you're like, let's say, if I'm translating as a Buddhist, then I'm translating with my readership being Buddhist people who like and are ready to hear strange things. Okay, so I can kind of have the freedom to insert jargon and strange stuff like dragon instead of thunder and this kind of things, because I'm expecting either that they want to search for where this comes from, if they don't know, or that they already know it and then they're going to understand it.
But in a way that will make them understand, for example, the dragon, that somehow that it's the sound and that it's resounding, or that, like in our example, that it has something to do with the thunder.
Yeah, that is you being kind. Schleiermacher doesn't say that.
No,
But
yeah,
there's
because that would be
also-
adding the footnote.
Yes, that would be, yes. But Shriyamaha
Yeah.
doesn't talk about adding footnote or adding homely, yummy, etc. He just says,
But would he?
I know.
You don't know because have you read any translation?
No, but reading from this page,
No, from this
from
page.
that page,
But this is very summarized,
We have
Drupchen,
one
very
dialogue
summarized.
about Schleiermacher's views, and we can't.
We might, if we're going to study all this,
But now,
this
now,
man,
now
we
I'm
might
confused
find that
again.
he to be trading.
I was all set. I was all set, and now I don't know anymore again.
But I would say that there's different levels of choices, right? Like the insult that you were saying. Maybe it's not so important than translating something which is extremely symbolic, like a dragon, or something which is very meaningful to a culture at a symbolic level, at the ideological level. I don't know. Then little things which might not be that important. Like if you have a gesture, or like you're saying, like you're fat, it's a compliment, or you do a gesture. It's probably not so important if you really translate that into your own language, like a gesture is which is an insult. But if in the case of dragon or other cultural aspects, it might be more.
here the dragon, no, it's basically just the sound. And I just think that there's an animal in the sky that makes this sound, and that's it. It has no symbolic at all. But yeah.
The dragon, it's an animal
No.
that doesn't exist as such.
Yes, it does exist.
For the Tibetans, it
exists.
does.
A dragon, like a dragon,
Yes,
like a dragon.
exactly. It exists.
That's what we were
Yeah.
talking about yesterday.
Yes.
That they actually thought that, well, they believe that it's
Yeah.
the dragon that's making the thunder.
Yeah, exactly.
Actual dragon.
Yeah. And there was
But it's
one
part of-
Rinpoche,
yeah.
yes, one Rinpoche went all around Europe during his teaching saying, dragons exist. I have seen them with my own eyes. And people were all like, what's this Buddhist teacher saying? So,
Okay,
and-
but we all know in 20th
Who
century.
was the one who said that?
But you know, he knows the opposite.
No.
He knows the
20th century, we know how the dragon is important for Asian cultures.
This is
Oh,
Chinese culture, not Tibetan culture.
Okay, but we know that the animal is part of this mythology or this symbolic whatever, even if they exist or not exist. We know, so we know what it is, a dragon. And if we also have them in our fairy tales. So it's not so.
Yeah, whatever the case.
So why not keep it? Because I don't say
Yeah,
that.
that was
a
the solution
problem, but-
in the translation that we had seen yesterday. Instead of just saying the thunder, they say the
dragon sound.
Yeah, the thunder of the dragon's thunder. So they kind of kept the two things. It's like saying a yummy steak and kidney pie. That was the solution.
Yeah, we don't even. Yeah. Oh, for you. Actually, I used
Uh-huh.
the thing for the lion, so it's which is very similar. I have never heard the dragon, but I suppose that.
Okay.
There are lots of levels to this. You know, there are levels of like dragon thunder, you know, I think you can elegantly solve that with this sort of, you know, the dragon thunder or something like this. There were words where you quite simply justify putting in another word, you know, like aufregend in German. It's a word that is sort of means sort of exciting, but it can also be a negative word, exciting, you know, like a negative version of exciting. So if you're translating exciting from English into German and you just write aufregend, you know, sometimes the context makes it clear that it's something positive going on, and other times you have to sort of write positiv aufgeregt, you know, because you just have to make it clear as a translator, because it's clear in English.
Yeah.
But it, you know, because exciting is always positive. But you know, so sometimes you two words is actually the translation of one word. You know, things like this. Other levels, you're looking at the context, the paragraph. You know, it's like there might be a particular insult which is very key to the whole story. You know, there might be just this subtle little insult. I think this is an insult in French. I'm not sure. The little finger. I can't remember. It's something from my childhood. But there might be this subtle little insult which someone does, you know, repeatedly every time he meets a certain person, you know, over the course of 5 chapters of the book. And it builds up, and it's chapter 6, the other person just explodes and says, "You've been insulting me ever since I knew you." Now, if the French reader is going to recognize that, you know, just from this tiny little description of whatever it was, you know, there's going to be this, the French reader is going to be going, "Oh, did you, yeah, that was a tiny little insult there. Oh, there it is again," you know. The translation in English, if you just say he raised his little finger, what was that, you know? So it's important to settle this issue, you know, but so you're going to have to answer the question to yourself, you know, do I put in insulting finger or what, how do I do it, you know? And with Dobby, it was part of the character building for Dobby, and that's you know, it was a sustained effort by Dobby to get back into the good shoes, you know, as we say in English, to get into his good shoes, to get back into the favor of his master. So it was part of several things that he did. So it is quite important for the reader to know that, and so then you have to make this decision, you know. And it's not just this one sentence; it's part of something.
So like that would be a Schleiermacher's solution, to add a little something that makes the reader understand.
Yeah, he would, you know, I think he would, I understand it as he would leave in steak and kidney pie, and if necessary, depending on the other sentences, you know, he would add in delicious next to it or something.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, I understand it as that. That's
okay. Yeah.
From this page. I don't know Schleiermacher. Never read any of his translations, so I can't guarantee that.
Then Santiago, you are right.
No, I didn't. I don't. Yeah.
Good.
But yeah, so what would the, you know, the German who understands English would get this experience, and so I have to, you know, I have to think of that person. So I'm not going to write sauerkraut, but at the same time, I have to maybe help the other guy.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Then that makes more sense. I understood it wrongly at the beginning.
Oops.
Well, I was saying sauerkraut, so I guess I said all the options until something came out.
Is it not coming in another chapter? Might be.
We will definitely be looking at naturalizing and alienating again.
Yes, I think so. Yes, probably there will be more explicit.
Yeah. Comes up in one of these chapters where we look at all these different techniques. You know, there was this whole table of all these different sort of procedures or strategies, which we'll be looking at.
Okay.
Okay. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Perry.